What if I told you that everyone's previous assumptions about Sparkle were wrong, including myself? From her being a better Bronya to her being more worthless than Hanya. Okay, that one was a lie, but Sparkle lies all the time, so I'm pretty sure it's okay. In today's video, I'll break down what makes Sparkle shine the brightest over other Harmony characters by going over her best free-to-play light cones, unique relic options, the team she squeezes in between, most importantly, how to take full advantage of action advanced quirk. Huh? What do you mean that's not my hero? I thought she was one of the villains.
There's only one bullet left. Wanna play a game? What's your wager?
Sparkle isn't a complicated support character by design, but there are a few things that everyone should definitely be paying attention to before announcing he easily replaces Bronya. For starters, each of her traces are impactful in their own right. Nocturne has a general use of increasing all allies' attacks by 15%, but adds an additional 5 to 30% attack increase for her quantum allies. This opens up some alternative gear options for a mono quantum team that other team comps won't actually have access to, but I'll talk about that later on in the video. Her next bonus ability extends the crit damage boost from her skill until the start of the target's next turn, making a key difference in how her skill works compared to Bronya. While Bronya's buff is instant, it goes away immediately after their turn ends unless using a trick like Seele's Resurgence. Sparkle's buff is 50% forward and lasts until their next turn, meaning anything that happens in between then and now will carry her massive crit damage buff all the way through. This makes team combinations like Qingque, Clara, and a slower Topaz ridiculously powerful. Her last bonus ability is Almanac, which seems kind of like whatever, but now gives her the added option to become SP positive in some specific situations, like once again putting Clara and Topaz on the same team. Next, we can look at her talent, Red Herring. Actually, Red Herring, is that from Game of Thrones? As long as she's alive on the field, your SP cap extends from 5 to 7. The entire team also gains a damage increase up to 18% after using a skill point 3 times. That's important to keep in mind for who you're placing on the team with Sparkle. Some characters naturally work best with her, like Seele, Imagine Dragon, Qingque, and even Arlen. Everyone else just sort of falls under some different criteria that requires you to change the way you play out the attack ever so slightly. Then that's when her ultimate comes into play. These SP hungry characters are actually rewarded both in terms of damage output speed, as well as Sparkle recovering 4 boosted skill points for the next 2 turns. Not that she gives you 4 skill points for the next 2 turns, but the skill points that she gave you during her ultimate are, you guys get it. So that's 6% damage per stack I mentioned earlier. During ult, it turns into 16% per stack. I don't know about you, but that's kind of cracked, especially when I tell you that she's permanently on a 3-turn ultimate cycle. The best part about this is the fact that using her ultimate during your DPS's turn will magically ensure a permanent uptime of both the ult and the buff. For whatever reason, similar to Luocha's abundance field, using it outside of her own turn doesn't consume the initial turn being counted. Why? I don't know, but it works. And even after all that, it's still her skill that you'll hear everyone talking about for the next few months. Dream Diver increases an ally's crit damage by 24% of her own stats, plus an additional 45%. Without getting super detailed on the math, your safest number is to shoot for 180% crit damage on Sparkle, since the returns get smaller the higher you go from here. The crit damage isn't the only glorified effect here. Sparkle basically uses combat redeployment on any given ally on top of that crit damage buff. The first problem is that her version of Bronya's skill only advances them forward by 50%. The not so big deal to that same problem, however, is the most critical part of her kit. If you want to get the best out of Sparkle's advanced forward, you need to speed tune your DPS and possibly the rest of the team, just so that they can match Sparkle's speed as desired. I know that sounds confusing when I say it, so let me just show you what I mean. All right, so 50% advanced forward has very little to do with this number up front. It's got everything to do with the character's actual action value, which you get from the formula 10,000 divided by their speed. Sparkle advances someone forward by 50% of that. So in this case, we'll use Qingque. If Qingque's speed is 99, then his AV equals 101. 50% of that is going to turn into 50.5, which is the number that Sparkle will continue decreasing their AV by until it reaches 0. So ideally in a turn 0 scenario, Qingque would start at 101. You would use Sparkle's advanced forward. That would knock 101 down to 50.5. In the event Qingque was already 50% through his actual turn, then whatever that number is gets reduced by 50.5 no matter what. So if Jiggy is at 70 minus 50.5, that'll turn into 20 something. If he's at 50, then 50.5 subtracted from that, now he's at 0. Your goal is to have the character already halfway through their turn before Sparkle pulls them forward. That in turn activates a 100% guaranteed pulling forward, even though it's still 50%. If none of this makes any sense, then trust me, you're not alone. The general rule of thumb that all of us have come up with is that as long as Sparkle isn't 2 times the speed or more of your DPS, or I guess in this case slower, he's always going to whip them up forward by 100% anyway, regardless of the fact that the skill still says 50%. Because of that, you can basically throw your speed boots away and give them to somebody else. You want as close to their natural speed as you can get to make your Sparkle's action advance trick as true as possible. The other way to run Sparkle that you'll hear about is going to be the slow Sparkle, which is basically imitating 134 speed Bronya. I highly recommend you don't even waste your time doing this, especially if you already own Bronya. You lose out on the option to run attack boots for your DPS, you suck up more skill points without boosting forward 100%, and you lose the benefit of the 3-turn ult uptime. It's genuinely not worth it, which is why I keep telling you guys, Sparkle might be an amazing character, but she requires a lot of investment for you to get the most out of her.
There's only one bullet left. Wanna play a game? What's your wager?
As the light cone banner connoisseur, her signature light cone isn't mandatory, but makes your relic hunt ridiculously easier. With just her traces and this light cone, she's already giving 84% crit damage from that skill buff I mentioned earlier. The mask ability this light cone gives also increases the party's crit rate and damage for 3 turns, which then just resets itself after she uses her ult anyway. For a support character, this light cone is huge in making her do her job without thinking about it. After this, every other light cone comes down to what type of Sparkle you're building your team for. Past and Future adds a 32% damage increase at S5 just for using her skill, which is huge when you actually do the math behind it and consider the fact that this is a free-to-play light cone. Sparkle Cypher Boost gives you 48% and Past and Future gives you another 32%. That's a whole 80% Ruan Mei boost just for equipping the right light cone on a Sparkle. Battle Isn't Over does the exact same thing, but adds 10% ERR and regenerates an extra skill point every other ultimate. This light cone combined with any of the energy planar ornament sets almost allows a 3-turn ultimate without the rope. You are quite literally missing 1.5 points. Dance 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 is fantastic when you're shooting for those 0 cycles, but honestly, I'm still testing whether or not it's even worth using this light cone on her over adding a ridiculous amount of damage onto your allies instead. Damage wise, this loses out as an option, but in the event you combine this with a turn 1 Von Pack shenanigan set, then we can start asking some questions. From there, you look at her relics, which honestly, these don't even matter. Sparkle can be built in whatever way you want because you quite literally only care about her speed and crit damage as the first priority. Then bulk her up to heaven and beyond just so she doesn't die. Personally, I'd shoot for giving her any 2-piece combination of Messenger, Wuthering Snow, or Longevist. These 3 specifically because they're coming from domains you should be farming with a Sparkle team anyway. On the rare chance you do have some amazing pieces from the Twilight Eagle set, then that is technically her best in slot, at least viability wise. Planar ornaments are pretty varied too. Broken Kill for more crit damage, Penacony for the extra 10% damage for quantum units, Sprightly for a guaranteed 3 turns in the first cycle, so on and so forth. You can damn near build this character however you want as long as you achieve that desired 161 speed and 180% crit damage minimum.
There's only one bullet left. Wanna play a game? What's your wager?
As far as team building goes, Sparkle is once again a character that just slides right into a solid number of team comps with enough effort. I'm not going to say a little amount of effort because you definitely need to make sure your speed tuning is in check since everyone doesn't have the same base speed. You will run into some situations where a character is too fast. Regardless of Sparkle not being 2 times their speed and because of the way action values work, they won't immediately advance forward, but instead land about 1 or 2 spots behind anyway. Sparkle, Imbibitor Lunae, Qingque, and Fu Xuan. This was personally the best team I had the experience of playing with the full intent of exploding on everything. Sparkle boosts Daniel to an absurd degree of damage while 100% advancing him forward every single skill. Thanks to the abundance of SP she gives from the start of the game, he always has enough SP to max burst every attack. Qingque then tops him off with her energy and damage buffs, further increasing his damage while Fu Xuan ensures you're hitting 100% crit rate thanks to her matrix. I know I just put out a top 5 teams, but this is the way Daniel wants to be played, and for once, I can confidently say this is his best performance yet. even at E0. Next up is your standard mono-quantum team, except you're replacing Qingque or Bronya with Sparke. What's cool about Sparke is she basically replaces both of these characters built into one due to the fact her advanced forward helps fill Seele's energy on her own and combines the buffs they give consistently. Not only does Silverwolf ensure the quantum weakness is applied whenever you want, but she also enables the trace Nocturne that increases the damage for all of them by 30%. Damage being like the attack percent, not damage percent, but the attack percent. You guys know, I said it earlier. When it comes to overall performance though, this team excels at enabling Seele or Qingque to continue ignoring the game's resistances towards their strength, and then they just power through it anyway. You will see me playing this team a lot more. The final team I'd like to offer up is one that showcases Sparkle's passive ability to extend her buffs until the ally's next turn. This works perfectly for a character like Qingque, who can take advantage of Sparkle's advance forward to reach 10 Lightning Lord stacks every single cycle, while still holding on to the boost long enough for that same Lightning Lord to obliterate all the enemies on the field. You can take your choice between using Pela or Qingque in this situation, but I do want to point out I found some moderate success with adding a sub DPS character like Sushong on the team. Keep in mind this is super niche, but because of the abundance of skill points, if you're only ever using one DPS character who strikes once per turn, then you'll always have an overabundance of skill points, which is technically going against what Sparke wants to do, because the more that you consume, the more you get boosted up. Many players might not be open to the idea of it, but Sparke actually benefits greatly from adding a second DPS type character onto the team in specific situations like this.
There's only one bullet left. Wanna play a game? What's your wager?
Lastly, I'll address the age-old question, E1 or S1. Inherently, I don't believe either is as important of a choice compared to characters like Daniel, Mei, or even Black Swan. While both options are great, I'd lean towards her signature Litecoin a little more, simply because I personally like big dig damage on the field. In the event I was free to play, then I'd probably just save up to pair a future DPS character with her that shows a lot more damage potential. And with all of that, we're done. Sparke is a super cool character that honestly went under the radar for me. I expected a lot less of her with all of the comparisons to Bronya, but in truth, I found that the best way to explain her from my own perspective is that if Bronya is the heads on a quarter, then Sparke is tails. Regardless of the coin flip, they both still cost 25 cents. Where one excels, the other falters, and where the other falters, well, the other one excels. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for some future videos where I fail to use Sparke correctly. I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube, but if you want to see more content preparing you for 2.0, then check out some of these videos right here. Smell you later.